Malloy, host of Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show. I hope you'll join us every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. Eastern Time, here on the Tan Talk Radio Network, where we strive to bring you the libertarian perspective on political events of the day. There's no show quite like Freedom Works, with in-depth interviews, our ultimate top 10 list, and so much more. So join us for Freedom Works, The Paul Malloy Show, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 10 to 11 a.m. here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Thinking about starting your own business? Then you need to listen to the Entrepreneur Opportunity Hour every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. There's nothing more rewarding than starting your own business. Gene and Mr. Dukes will bring you tips and advice from themselves and other entrepreneurs that will help you get started. Have you already started your own business? Then call in and share your story to help other entrepreneurs. That's the Entrepreneur Opportunity Hour every Thursday from 6 to 7 p.m. right here on the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Hey, you new to the area or just want to know about the best hidden gems and upcoming events? Stay tuned. Be Local Buzz with Devin takes you to these places, introduces you to the best businesses, and tells you about upcoming buzz. Preset your radio to Tan Talk 1340 AM or 106.1 FM every Thursday from 4 to 5. That is the Be Local Buzz with Devin on Tan Talk 1340 AM and 106 FM every Thursday from 4 to 5. Looking forward to speaking with you.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
It's now time for Connecting Caregivers with author, speaker, caregiver advocate, and talk show host, Linda Burhans, the gal who cares for caregivers.
All the caregivers around the world today, it's time to lift you up. It's time to celebrate. Good afternoon and welcome to Connecting Caregivers with me, Linda Burhans, the gal who cares for the caregivers with love, laughter, and lessons learned. Because, you know, I got a bunch of that stuff.
You do, my friend. You do.
With me today is we have Officer Joel Quattlebaum. We're going to speak to in a couple minutes. Welcome.
Thanks for having me again.
I love when you come back.
Oh, it's always great to be here.
And with me is my best friend, my co-host, and my sidekick, not psychic, Lynn Thornley.
Good afternoon.
It's good to see you.
I know. I miss you. You were away.
Yes, I was in Colorado Springs, and I got to meet my great-grandson, Landon Thomas, and I can't tell you what a delight. You know, I have a very busy life, and just to take a few days to just chill with a baby, who could ask for anything more? And he's just so fabulous. He goes to bed at between 9 and 10 o'clock at night and doesn't get up till 6 a.m.
Wow.
Yes.
That's a good baby.
Good boy. Good boy.
But you had trouble breathing up there a little bit, eh?
Yeah, for that altitude kind of stuff. All of a sudden one day, I went out for a walk, and you know me, in the morning I go out for a walk. I'm like, oh my God, what's happening to me?
It's not Florida anymore.
No, I got in the house later and I thought, oh yeah, it was like when you were in Peru and whatever. It's a little bit too much, so I drank some more electrolytes and whatever.
Oh, does that help?
Yeah, it makes a big difference. Big difference with the altitude. You just got to keep pumping yourself with that stuff, and then you can,
Not just plain water.
No. Well, any water helps. But if you have it with the electrolytes, yeah, it's like super Gatorade, but it's not Gatorade. It doesn't have all that other stuff in there. I don't like.
It's like smart water.
Yeah, you're just so smart.
I know.
So I'm very happy to say that all the videos from the conference went out to all the registrants this week, and a ton of great responses. It touches my heart when a caregiver says, "Oh my goodness, I learned something new." Or this morning in the support group, a new person came from the conference.
Oh wow,
so
nice.
That was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But just to know that those resources are out there and that we can help. The next conference is already planned for November 14th, 15th, 16th. But one of the caregivers sent me an email, and I sent back and I said, "Can I add you to my emailing address?" And she said, "This conference changed my total perspective on caregiving. I feel like I can go on, but I need more." I said, "I'm your girl." But really, that makes me feel so good because you can change your perspective on caregiving. You can find resources that makes it better. I hate when I see caregivers that are so frustrated and so sad and just so overwhelmed. But there are resources out there. There are people that want to help you. There are support groups. So that's what we do. So I'm excited about that. I'm going to be on a caregiver this week. I'm going to be on a caregiver's television show. So I'll keep you apprised. It's supposed to be like on Apple TV and Roku. I don't know what that stuff is, but we'll see. But it's all good. So welcome, Joel. How are you today?
I'm doing fantastic.
All
I'm doing
spiffed up in
fantastic.
a fancy uniform. Where were you today?
So our chief of police actually retired today after over 30 years with the police department. So this is a big day for celebration for him and for the department. So we just came from that and kind of switching gears here and getting back into the boots on the ground caregiver assistance perspective. So thank you for having me here today. Really appreciate
thanks
it.
you for being here, because you know what, there are so many, and we were just talking about this before the show. There are so many resources that are available, but people don't think to call the police department. They think to call the police department when mom falls or when something really bad is happening. But there are many resources through the police department. So let's talk about some of the resources that you have.
Yeah, so one of the big ones here in Pinellas County is the Pinellas County Yellow Dot program. It's very simple, and just like the name suggests, it's a yellow dot. It's a decal that goes on the rear driver's side windshield. It's just a queuing mechanism to look in the glove box for EMS, fire and rescue, and law enforcement to look and see. It's a little packet of information. It has doctor's info, family information, contact information, medications, etc.
Like you have on the side of your refrigerator.
Exactly.
But you don't take your fridge out. So.
No, you don't
Car's a
you don't
good
take
thing.
the fridge in the back of the car, right?
Yeah.
So it's a program started back in 2018. Largo kind of spearheaded it with the county, and it's been in place for a while. So we're still trying to get the information and word out on that. But it's a very simple program. They actually combined it with the Vial of Life program. So the Vial of Life, it's a decal. It goes on the front door of your home, and it cues, again, EMS, fire rescue, law enforcement to look on the fridge for the exact same packet of information that would be in the glove box. So it protects you in your home and out when you're in your car.
So I'm thinking, so I have this information in my glove box, and I'm driving mom to the doctor's.
Yeah.
And we get in a car accident.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm not conscious, maybe, or whatever. Right?
Yeah.
Don't even go there. But they will then know from finding that information how to best care for mom.
Yes. And so that's a big thing, is that it doesn't even have to be for you. That decal could be an indicator for somebody who rides in the car with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so what other information? Does it say anything in there about, like, my mom has dementia?
Yes. So it has
That's what I want to talk about.
any diagnosis. It has any type of medications that they're on, primary care physician, any family contacts. Basically, it's a beacon of information for EMS, fire rescue, and law enforcement, the first responders on scene. So that way, any type of pre-hospital care, anything like that, can be established right there on the scene, which is huge. Because one of the things that folks get confused on sometimes is they see a cell phone that's, I have ICE in case of emergency, right? Well, there's no emergency exception to the Fourth Amendment for law enforcement, at least. So even though you might have your cell phone, a lot of times it's locked, typically with a passcode, et cetera. But then also, too, we can't just go search for somebody's phone.
Right.
So when you have that decal,
you can't?
No, we can't. So it gives us the ability to actually look in the glove box and get the information that we need to contact family or emergency contacts that you want. So we have that in place for the county. And then Largo actually stepped up and took it another step further, where we have a RMS ID bracelet too, which is the same general concept, but it uses our record management system within the city of Largo. So let's say if you're in your home, you have the Vial of Life decal, which has that packet information on your fridge. Then you get in your car, which now you have the yellow dot decal on the driver's side rear windshield.
Right.
You have that packet in the glove box. But what happens when you go into Publix and you have a medical episode? Well, then who would know the information that's in those two packets, right? So this bracelet, engraved on there, it simply says, if located, contact Largo PD, the non-emergency number, and your RMS ID number, your record management system number.
Okay.
So then it takes about 30 minutes, but we create a profile for you with any information you want us to have in that case of emergency.
You know, I like so much that it's in the glove compartment, because I think of there's a car accident and I'm not able, and mom is like, I don't even know who she is.
Mm-hmm.
Or, she's just fine. Why are you taking her away? Or maybe, whatever mom is saying, because, and you don't know mom has dementia or Alzheimer's, whatever. But when you have that information, then you can adjust that.
Well, and it's fantastic too, because for law enforcement, when you respond out to traffic crash, et cetera, you don't know what you're walking into.
No.
And if there is that kind of, there might be that confusion. We actually had a call for service not too long ago where a lady was found crying, spoke only Spanish at the German restaurant on East Bay Drive. Well, what ended up happening was she had exited the vehicle at the intersection of Keene and East Bay, got out, crossed the intersection, and ran off to the restaurant. Her husband of 30 plus years was driving her back to the house. Well, we get there, due to cognitive decline, she reverted back to only speaking Spanish. Fortunately, I spoke Spanish, so I was able to communicate and translate. But come to find out, she thought she'd been kidnapped. Because of the cognitive decline, she reverted back from being bilingual, English and Spanish speaking, to the point where she only spoke Spanish. And so after 30 years of marriage, she didn't recognize her husband. She thought she'd been kidnapped. So in that case there, the yellow dot decal would be an indicator that there's some type of medical condition. And so to look into it a little bit further.
Well, I think that's really interesting too, because this morning a new person came to the support group. Someone from the conference, which just delights me. And she said, I'm taking care of my husband while he's in the community now or whatever. She said, but he one night we were disagreeing about something he didn't understand and everything, and he pushed me. And she fell, and they came in and they Baker acted him, which was the worst thing they could have done, because it first of all, it was something between the husband and wife, number one, because even though if I have dementia, we could have a disagreement or whatever. But he ended up, now, if the police department knew more of his background and what was going on, that wouldn't have happened.
And so I love you bring that up, because one of the biggest tenets for me is pre-crisis intervention and post-crisis intervention. So that would fall under the realm of pre-crisis intervention. So before you have a crisis incident, you want to have that communication dialogue with your local law enforcement. So one of the big things is that I highly encourage caregivers to reach out and proactively talk with your dispatchers, with your law enforcement, that whatever jurisdiction you're in, because most law enforcement agencies run some type of CAD, a computer-aided dispatch, and it gives them the ability to put notes on your residence, the actual location where you live. Okay. So if you're a caregiver for mom or for dad, and they have cognitive decline, be it dementia or Alzheimer's, that can be documented in the CAD system, that computer-aided dispatch.
Yeah, so the more information you have, the better you can help me.
That way law enforcement respond out, and even EMS Fire Rescue, they have that good communication ahead of time. So that way they know what they're walking into. So when, if mom sees herself in the mirror and she becomes combative, she doesn't recognize who she sees. Well, there's a reason for that. And so EMS Fire Rescue know that they're responding in a different way. And actually the Sheriff's Office, they've created a program that's called Respond with Care. And so that's a countywide program as well for Pinellas County residents. So
it's fabulous for the police officer too.
Yes.
He wants to go in and help out. He doesn't want to make the situation worse. And if he has some information about what's going on there.
Exactly. And that's also a queuing mechanism too for the law enforcement coming out, is they might have to use what we call CIT, crisis intervention team techniques. So law enforcement goes through what's called a 40-hour CIT course. Okay. And so it focuses on de-escalation techniques and strategies, as well as how to communicate with somebody in crisis. So by having that good communication, that pre-crisis intervention, that's huge, because that's going to alter how they respond to that situation and provide a little bit more insight and information on how best to communicate with those individuals, including the family. Because they are also most likely under a lot of stress, bearing that burden of being a caregiver, and allows for the follow-up of how can we help support you in that role, which is huge, and that's that post-crisis intervention.
All right, so we're here in Pinellas County, but there are listeners for the show all over the United States. And so I live in Virginia, and my mom lives in Largo.
Yeah.
And so what can I do as that caregiver that's out of state that helps my mom and helps give myself also better peace of mind? What kind of programs? I mean, people think they only call the police department when your house is being broken into.
When it's a bad thing, right? Yeah. When it's a bad situation, right?
Right.
But there can be good communications ahead of time, which is fantastic. And I do get a lot of calls from caregivers' family that are out of state, but their parents live here in Largo, Pinellas County, etc. And so
the big retirement room.
It's fortunate we have the highest demographic, 85 plus seniors in the state. So we do have that demographic. But working as a senior services officer for Largo, it gives me the ability to kind of connect people with resources. But one of the biggest things is having that communication with law enforcement. I want to have that conversation with the daughter in Virginia, so that way I can put the notes in for that residence where mom lives.
Right.
But then also too, for Largo specifically, I will get her an RMS ID bracelet. We have grant funding for that, to get her that bracelet that says RMS ID number, contact Largo PD in case there is a wandering incident.
So they call up the police department and they say, I want you to do a welfare check on my mom. Mm-hmm. And then you do that and you check her from there, because I know if my daughter calls me up, I'm good. I am really good. Nothing's wrong with me. I don't need nothing. I don't have black and blues down my leg where I walked into the furniture.
Yeah. And so the other thing too is you can't request a welfare check if you're having difficulty reaching out to your parents and they're not answering the phone. We're actually looking and exploring a program called Are You Okay right now.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So some agencies across the country employ a program called Are You Okay? It's a computer software where once a day it makes a pre-dialed phone call out to the family member. So it can be set it for 8 o'clock in the morning, 12 noon, whatever's best. And then basically they get a call saying, this is the Largo Police Department. Are you okay? And so if they hang up, then it goes on to the next phone call, next person to call. If you say no, then it's going to trigger that welfare check response. So then if you don't answer, then it's going to call you back a couple different times. They can preset it however often. But then from there, it will trigger a welfare check. So that way, you know that if you feel bad as a caregiver, you can't call your mom or dad every single day.
Oh, you're busy. You got your family.
So that's been found to take a lot of stress off of family caregivers across the country. So that's something that we're looking at exploring for Largo, as well as, if not, it's one of those things where you can always request a traditional welfare check. Just if you can't get in touch with your mom or dad or your loved one down here, I know that's a big stress for a lot of family caregivers up north that can't be here every single day.
Well, I think it's also a lot of stress for that caregiver that doesn't really want to talk to mom every day because mom's going to give her a litany of whatever. But if she knows that someone else is, this service is checking in on her and she's okay, maybe she only has to have that phone call twice a week instead of 7 days a week or whatever.
Yeah. So I would definitely advise having that conversation, that pre-crisis intervention communication with the local law enforcement jurisdiction. If they're not in Largo or they might be in a different area, that's fine. Even if they're in Melbourne or wherever they may be across the state, contact the local law enforcement jurisdiction, have that pre-crisis communication, say, hey, I'm a caregiver. I live up north, but my mom or dad are here. They've been diagnosed with this. So that way the dispatch can have those call notes ready. They can have the alerts in the CAD system. And that way, whoever is coming out has that pre-knowledge of how best to respond and maybe employ those crisis intervention techniques.
And there's a lot of ways that your loved one can get help. There are a lot of grants too, all these different kinds of programs. Because I remember when COVID first started, my daughter's a hairdresser, and she started going to seniors' houses and cutting their hair outside.
Yeah.
And that's what they felt comfortable with. And I remember she went to this one guy's house, and she said, "Oh my God, Mom, there's a gaping hole in his floor with a piece of plywood over it, and he can barely get his wheelchair around there.
Yeah.
He's like trapped in that house." And I called Joel, and you went over there, and the guy's got a brand new floor now, and he can get in and out of his house. And what a difference. That changed his life.
He didn't have a life.
He didn't have a life.
Well, and sometimes that's where creative policing comes into play. And different agencies apply for different grants. We just applied for a $10,000 grant for in-home assistance. So when we go out for a crisis incident, there's follow-up, and that's that post-crisis intervention, where that way we can employ in-home assistants to just a couple times a week come check in.
That's huge.
So that's, it's like I said, the big tenets are pre-crisis and then post-crisis. That's very important to have those communications and conversations. And the other thing too, speaking to that matter, is when a crisis does occur, how does law enforcement get there? One of the things that caregivers might consider doing is creating what's called a Knox box. It's like a master lock box on the home. It has a key to the house that EMS, fire rescue, law enforcement dispatch has the code for. So that way, in case of emergency,
we don't have to bust mom's front door down.
Instead of having to do a forced entry, exactly.
Yeah, that's really good.
That way, they could make entry and they could go in and check. So that might be a conversation to have too, is with the local law enforcement and fire rescue jurisdictions of, we have a Knox box on the home. So in case you need to enter, here's the combination for it. So
How do you spell that?
So a Knox box, KNOX.
Like Fort Knox.
Like Fort Knox.
Okay.
But
Okay. I was thinking
Yeah, any type of a master lock box.
it's called a Knox box.
That's just a general term. There's different
Never
brands.
heard of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now my mom lives in Florida and I live in Connecticut or whatever, and I found out from her neighbors that her lawn's not being mowed, the garbage is not going out. What can I do about that?
So that is something where we need to look at a long-term solution, right? So this is something where we look at activities of daily living, as far as the cooking, bathing, cleaning, maintenance of home, et cetera, personal hygiene. Are those being able to be accomplished on their own, or is it something where we need to look at community partners and connections to to fill in the gaps. You know,
Like, do they need Meals on Wheels, or do they?
Correct. And so that's where, somebody like in my position, the senior services officer, would go out and assess for what community resources might best benefit them. Like we have the Area Agency on Aging, they contract with Gulf Coast Jewish Family Services for in-home assistance.
Yeah.
Depending on where you live in the country, and depending on where your folks live in the state of Florida or throughout the country, I'd highly recommend reach out to local area agency on aging and see what connections they have. Do the intake. They have the ADRC, their Aging and Disability Resource Center, that can help fill those gaps. Because when you're out of state and your loved one's here, the stress is on how do I help them, because I know their grass needs to be mowed, but I can't go and mow it for them physically. Right. How do we get them registered for these programs? And a lot of times that stopgap measure is the Area Agency on Aging. But I would also, part of that pre-crisis intervention is reach out to law enforcement and say, do you have a community services officer or deputy if it's local sheriff's office, and say, hey, can you go out and do a check and see if there's any services that my mom or dad might benefit from? And sometimes these local connections and partnerships can fill those gaps.
Okay, so people are like, how do I know if mom needs help? I'll tell you how you know if mom needs help. You come down and you visit her without her knowing you're coming.
Yeah. If you schedule the visit,
because if you, oh my God, I'll get food in the refrigerator from Publix. I might even vacuum. The whole deal. I said, please. And then what I want you to do is I want you to go talk to their neighbors. Because the neighbors are going to tell you everything that's going on exactly. And I remember one of my caregivers said to me, I did that, Linda. I came to Florida to visit. I went over and I spoke to the neighbor, and the neighbor said, oh my goodness, we were so worried when the ambulance came and took her away 2 weeks ago. Well, mom never told them anything about that.
Well, and that comes down to of knowing the real situation. And to speak to that, you might encounter the real situation. And then what I found is caregivers call law enforcement and say, I came down here to check on mom or dad, and it's a mess. I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I'm shocked.
And we've they encounter hoarding homes, fecal matter on the floor, and just they encounter these mountainous challenges.
Pets not being taken care of.
What do we do to help? And the answer is a lot of times I think sometimes there's a misconception of the Department of Children and Families for the state of Florida. Their main objective is not to put people into a home or something like that. They want to provide resources, and they do have the adult protective investigators the ability to make what's called a high risk referral for services. Okay. So you might call the area agency yourself, but when DCF comes out and their adult protective investigator comes out in reference to an allegation of self-neglect, their objective is to put services in place, right? Yeah. So they do have the ability to make a high-risk referral. And so law enforcement and DCF work very closely together a lot of times to mitigate the need for a Baker Act, or to mitigate the need for a placement into a home, because a lot of times people age most successfully in place in their house.
Yes.
Where they're most familiar.
Nobody says, I want to go move into a nursing home.
Yeah. So that's where, having those communications is huge, and using those resources, because in a state of crisis, you don't want to be trying to figure things out, having that dialogue.
Yeah, we don't want to be in crisis.
Exactly. So having those communications ahead of time is very important.
You plan more for your vacation than you do some of this stuff. So please think about it.
And I think Sean can probably speak to this too, but having that plan in place of who's going to be your power of attorney, your healthcare surrogate, is during crisis. You don't want to be trying to figure all that stuff out. You need to have that established ahead of time. So that's very important. And that's why I found the families that are most successful have those documents in place, have that plan in place. So that way, if something does happen and law enforcement's involved, one, we've already been talking, but two, they have the documents in place and the things that they need to be successful.
Yeah, I have to tell you something. I was out in New York. I was in Colorado, actually, after New York. My aunt lives in New York, and the other night she fell getting out of the bathroom and hurt herself and didn't have her button on and crawled to the other side of the house, the whole drama thing. And I said to my cousins, just get her an Alexa. Mm-hmm. She doesn't have to have that button on. Wherever she's in the house, it'll be like, call in. Mm-hmm. So I want to mention that to everybody. It's such a cheap and simple solution to a lot of things. You can also program into Alexa, call mom if you just want to have a conversation, or call my daughter or whatever. And we don't think about that.
And it works through your cell phone. You have to have a cell phone.
Yeah. But who doesn't today? How many people have a house phone anymore? You do, but... You just got a new flip of. You just got a flip phone like 6 months ago.
Yeah, and you're all going to be when the cell towers go down, and I'm on my home phone. You may not borrow.
Can you bring it over to my house? Because when the hurricanes come. Anyway, Joel, what's the last thing you would like our caregivers to hear today?
I would say look at partnering. Don't try and shoulder this burden of responsibility all by yourself. Look at what community connections are out there. Look at neighbors to help out. It does take a village. That is a very, very true statement. So look at partnering with local law enforcement, EMS, fire rescue, and having that plan in place ahead of time. Do that pre-crisis communication and have a plan. It's the most important thing you could do. Apart from that, just know that you're doing the best you can and that you have people that are out there to support you.
And do you have a phone number where people can reach you?
Yeah, so if you have any questions, you can always reach me at 727-586-7351, and that is my direct contact line. I'm always happy to help as the Senior Services Officer for Largo PD, and then also out in the community as well.
Thank you, my friend. It's a pleasure, as always.
Always glad to be here.
And Joel will also be part of our next conference, November 14th, 15th, and 16th. But right now, we want to hear from our wonderful sponsors, because if you don't hear from them, you don't hear from me. So don't go away. We'll be right back on Connecting Caregivers Radio.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library for support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Sean W. Scott has been practicing elder law and qualifying clients for Medicaid for over 30 years. While his practice is in all areas of estate planning, such as durable power of attorney, healthcare surrogates, and wills, he also prides himself on having a 100% accuracy rate on getting clients approved for Medicaid. Why Medicaid, you may ask? Do you want to pay up to $16,000 a month for a nursing home should the time come? Obviously, no one wants to have to endure this cost. So even though you may have planned well for retirement, the reality is things happen. Planning ahead is never too soon. You need to make sure your income and assets are protected so that you can take care of you and your loved ones. Florida law is very specific on how and what is protected and how to protect it. Give Sean a call. He can help. 727-539-0181. That's 727-539-0181.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
And we are back. Once again, I'm very grateful to Officer Quattlebaum for being here today and answering questions. And
Officer Joel.
And that's Mr. Sean Scott, who you hear right now.
Hey, Linda, how you doing?
I'm doing fabulous, and I see that you have some seminars coming up here, free Medicaid seminars at the following locations.
At the following locations. Where are they going to be?
So today, do you know where you're going today?
I do. Largo Library. Immediately after this, I get my little happy person over there.
2:30. And then on Monday, June 5th, he'll be 2 o'clock at the Seminole Library, and Tuesday, June 6th at 2 p.m. at the Palm Harbor Library.
Yeah, and these are great things. I mean, it allows you to come out and hang out and talk with your attorney face to face, ask these questions that you have about caregiving, about how do I pay for that. I know Officer Joel was talking about powers of attorney and healthcare surrogate and how important those are.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a really great opportunity. It's in a nice setting at your local library. Nobody's selling you anything. The only downside is that there's also no lunch or steak or lobster. So,
you can't have
just me and my brain and my
but you know
33 years of knowledge.
When you go to something like that and you hear one caregiver answer a question and someone else, then you're like, oh, that's something I need to think about. I met a caregiver the other day. And she said to me, I have all my papers in order. I said, you do? And she said, yeah, my mom has a will.
Oh, God. Yeah, right.
Yeah. So when we say papers in order, it's not, oh, yeah, I have a will.
It's a problem of not knowing what you don't know in this situation. So when we talk about those papers that you need to have in order in advance, there's a real biggie that's out there, and that's that power of attorney thing. And we've talked about this before, but I literally can't talk enough about it. I like to say that there's a reason why they put 2 seats in the front of every airplane. Well, one's for the pilot. Well, you're the pilot of your life. I mean, you're making your decisions. You control the airplane. The airplane is the life. But, there's a spare seat there next to you on the right. Well, what's that seat for?
Your
Who's help?
co-pilot.
Co-pilot, right? So why do you have a co-pilot? Well,
In
if something
case
happens to the pilot, if there's only one person up there, the plane's going down, and it's not going to be a good result. So if you have a co-pilot that can take over, or at least even assist at sometimes, it makes you so much more successful in piloting through your life. The alternative of not having a co-pilot, not having this power of attorney person is a fairly onerous thing. You go through the court system, you got to get a guardian appointed. There's a 3-member medical panel that reviews you. There's at least one hearing, probably more likely 2 hearings, because they got to determine whether you have capacity or not. And then they have to fight about who's going to be your guardian.
Yeah.
This can take a long time. And if we're in a nursing home situation and we got a $10,000, $12,000 a month bill going, we can't do anything about that problem because the person's incapacitated and we have to go through the court system. Now, if you have a power of attorney, your son, your daughter, spouse, whoever we have that's out there can just slot in, fly the plane, land the plane successfully. And it's not even, well, it's still a problem, but it's not, you're not making the problem worse by not having somebody that can help. So.
Okay, somebody also said, because, we mostly talk about seniors on this show. What if I have a disabled child?
Yep.
What kind of documents do I need? Are they the same documents?
Yeah,
Are they
well,
different?
It gets a little tricky sometimes, but disabled child, that's kind of doesn't tell me a lot, because that, how disabled, okay, and how functioning, how much function do we have?
So this person that asked me is their child is going to live longer than them,
right?
And I think the person has like heavy Down syndrome,
right?
So can't make a lot of smart decisions. So his mom has been taking care of him since he's born, and he's 40 now, and she's 65.
Yep. And I've had this case. I mean, I've had this very same case, the same kind of fact situation. But like, Downs, for example, it's like Alzheimer's. So you have a diagnosis of this particular issue. It doesn't mean in the early stages, for example, of Alzheimer's disease, that you can't sign a power of attorney and get a co-pilot. Just because you have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's doesn't mean you're out of the box and you can't sign a document.
Right.
Now, if you have a kid that has Downs, for example, it depends on how functional they are, but let's assume that they have some function. He doesn't have to be able to do his I can't even do my multiplication tables. Okay, that's why I became a lawyer. So the idea is that we have to have some capacity there to understand who that he is, and that he wants this person to help him. And then he executes the document. Now, I like also to say is you don't have to have, this is kind of gross in a sense, you don't have to have any hands to sign a power of attorney. You can orally say, I want that document, I've signed this, or I want you to sign it on my behalf. So the functional physical capacity of signing something is not a deal breaker. And we've had documents either signed by Mark, which is this, whatever scratch you can put on the paper.
Okay.
And we've also done it where he said, I said with the client, you want to sign this, right? He says, yeah, absolutely. Okay, fine. We have stroke situations, loss of function. So with Downs, for example, that depending on how much function they have, they don't actually have to have this ability to write perfectly. If they can just express to us, I want
an aging senior.
Same exact thing, rinse and repeat. Absolutely. Right. So that's a good question. I don't think we've talked about that before.
No, it was very interesting when we were chatting about that. So another question that came up is, can I use the power of attorney before it's necessary? So this is what the woman said. And I can remember my mother saying to me, I don't want to make any decisions anymore, Linda. She's my boss. I'm done,
I know
Linda.
this client well, yes.
Yeah. Is that possible?
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about when a power of attorney becomes effective. And that's a good, because clients stumble over this all the time. This week, a client was going, well, I don't want this thing out there, and I don't want my daughter to do anything unless I don't have any capacity, unless I can't do it.
Right.
Well, that's not how it works, actually. So let's talk about when a power of attorney has utility. When does it work? When does your co-pilot have the ability to fly the plane?
Okay.
As soon as you sign that document. It's live and it's ready to rock and roll. There's no determination that has to be pre-made, whether you have capacity or not, whether you can do your own thing or not. That thing is a live document, and your co-pilot can fly right now. As a matter of fact, the Florida legislature a couple of years ago actually took away the ability to have some event trigger the effectiveness of your power of attorney. We used to have documents that sprung into life.
Could it be that event.
Correct. That what sprung into light. The document would say this person only has the ability to act on my behalf when I have lost capacity. And well, the legislature, actually, that sounds like a good thing. I admit it does. But in real practical implementation, it's a horrible thing because who determines your incapacity?
Exactly. Right.
How incapacitated are you? And so what we were seeing is that the banks and these kinds of people that were relying upon a document would be like, whoa, I don't know whether you're incapacitated or not. Go to the court, get the court to tell me that you're incapacitated. And while we're back in guardianship again. So they said, no, we're not doing that anymore. Actually, you cannot do it anymore. So the power of attorney document's live as soon as you sign it. Let's compare that to something else, which is important as well, called a healthcare surrogate designation. Now, I know this is not really that exciting, but when you need it, man, it's really exciting. Need it. It's pretty darn important. So, I don't know if we've talked about the story of my car truck accident when I got run over by a truck.
Repeat it. So we don't.
Well, about 6-7 years ago, I don't exactly have the date. I try to remind. Yeah, that's my loose screw. Thank you. Yeah, we'll talk about that too. So I was walking across the street on a Saturday morning in downtown St. Petersburg. Stepped off the into the intersection off the curb, and this big red plumbing truck hit me going through the intersection. I ended up about a block away, and it was bad. It was broken skull, broken neck, broken back, 8 broken ribs, brain bleed, emergency craniotomy, coma, died on the table, near-death experience, came back, the full experience, okay? 3 months in neurointensive care, learned had to go to nursing home and learn how to walk again. 6 months before I got back into real life. It was pretty intense. So during that period of time, I was kind of offline. And especially in the immediate moment, my brother, who was my healthcare surrogate, my medical co-pilot, had to make that ultimate decision of whether we go or no go on this craniotomy to save his life. Neurosurgeons going to him, I don't know who we're getting back. We might get Sean back, or we might not, because I can't tell you how bad this is.
Tough decision.
And so it's a tough decision. So go or no go. And so the joke is that we think that my brother made the right decision. Well, we don't know yet, but maybe we think jury's still out. So this healthcare surrogate is an awfully important thing because in the context of who talks to your doctor on your behalf.
Well, what if you didn't have that?
That's a problem. Okay, so now I have a health proxy.
What would happen?
Well, we have a health proxy situation, which is kind of a default who can help make those decisions. But then you oftentimes run up against that ultimate decision of should we treat or not treat for this situation?
Yeah. Because and it's not automatically your spouse or your parent.
Well, there is a statutory hierarchy where it's a spouse and then it goes down to children. And so it's like kind of the intestacy statute for where your stuff goes when you die if you don't have a will. It's similar to that. But that person still can't make that ultimate decision upon whether we treat or not treat, to live or die. That comes into a living will, which is, in my world, part of your healthcare surrogate. Right. So the healthcare surrogate, one of the points I wanted to make about that, though, is unlike the power of attorney that's effective, bang, immediately when you sign it, your healthcare surrogate person doesn't have the ability to act until the doctor really has determined that you don't have the ability to provide provide that informed consent, and you have the wherewithal to make
a good decision.
So your healthcare surrogate doesn't have authority until that. So that one does spring to life, so to speak, upon your incapacity. But there's also a doctor right there to make that determination. Yeah. So it's way different than the power of attorney thing. So,
and your healthcare surrogate and your power of attorney doesn't have to be the same person. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Let's talk about choice. So who's going to be who's going to be your co-pilot? All right. And that we have to talk about this with clients all day, actually, today.
Here's mine right here.
I know. Well, she's close and she knows you and you like her, and that's good. And that it doesn't have to be a family member. I mean, absolutely.
No, family member's tough because they don't want to pull a plug when it needs pulling.
There's that for sure. And then also your family members can vary in their capabilities. I mean, you can have 2 or 3 different kids, and one's really smart and able to handle things. The other one is really emotional and great with knowing who you are. So maybe your kid that's, let's just put labels on him. He's the accountant, right? He's really good with numbers, really good with math, really good with, finances.
He can look after the money.
So maybe he's a good idea for your power of attorney. But he would be the last person you want to talk to your doctor and make any kind of decision because he has no sensibility about me and what I like and my spirituality and my, kind of that psychology of living and dying. But my daughter again, just putting labels out there. She's
Right.
the art teacher, okay?
She
She's
gets
flower
me.
child. She's got, she wears shoes half of the time, but she really, really gets me and understands the whole beautiful thing about life and not life. And I want her to be my healthcare surrogate. But oh heck no, do not touch my checkbook.
Yeah.
So do you see,
Yeah.
there may be reasons to pick one versus the other. Another thing we talk about is sometimes you have multiple kids again. If all things are being equal, if your daughter in Oregon and your son in Largo are both equally capable, well, pick the closest one.
Yeah.
Okay. Proximity does because that's not the factor, but it is a factor if everything else is equal.
And to have those conversations, because many times the one that's out of state might say, my brother's in Largo, you got it, bud.
Yes, exactly.
People aren't like many times. I'm sure sometimes that I don't think most people are fighting over this. You know?
So the joke in the office is when we're talking with clients and they're like, well, who should I pick and who should I pick? And again, this is a joke. Well, which one of your kids do you like the least? Pick him. Okay. Because serving in this capacity oftentimes is no joy.
No.
So it can be a lot of work, a lot of responsibility. And none of your other siblings are going to really be thankful that you're doing it.
No. But the most important thing, as always, is to have the conversation. So even like when I was just visiting my granddaughter, we talked about some things, this kind of stuff we never talked about because she has a baby now. And she's like,
Right.
do you think I need to write a will? And I said, yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Do you think I
Oh,
go,
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you do. But many kids don't think about that today.
Not just, the writing of the will, when my son turned 18, when do you do these kinds of things? And I had a client, God, I was 86 years old this week. It comes into the office and we're going to do documents because it's just one of those visits. I go, so you ever done this before? He goes, nope. And I'm like, you're 86 and you've dodged the bullet for 86 years of not having any issues whatsoever? That kind of surprises me. So when my son turned 18, the week he turned 18, he was in the office and he signed a power of attorney and a healthcare surrogate. And so the rule is that you don't have to be old to have these documents. If you're breathing and you're over 18, you need it. Mm-hmm. Well, that year, actually, a year later, he was on an accident on I-95 going south to Miami. Car ran him off the road. He ended up upside down in the trees, being cut out by the fire department. Helicoptered to the emergency room in Fort Pierce.
Oh my God!
Broken neck and broken back, and they called me because he can't tell them what he wants to have done because he's offline.
Right?
Who's his healthcare surrogate? Me. So the stupid piece of paper keeps on coming up. It's not stupid, by the way, but this piece of paper, this healthcare
has
surrogate,
been very important.
Has been very important, not just for my clients professionally, but for me and my family personally. So I cannot tell you, if you don't have one of these, if you don't have both of them, actually, you needed it yesterday. Please get it by tomorrow.
And Sean, is this going to cost me thousands of dollars?
Oh my God, it's going to break the bank.
Yeah,
no,
please.
So I charge.
How much does it cost to go out to dinner now?
Well, it depends on who you go with.
Yeah.
So I do
And if
like a
they
nice
drink
bottle
or
of
not.
wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, but still.
No. I mean, the joke is this is a very, very important thing, and the money is so well spent. So in my office, I charge $175 to do a power of attorney. I am not making my retirement on your power of attorney, okay? And because you have that document in place, it will save you multiple thousands of dollars of avoiding guardianship. And in the world of this Medicaid thing and Medicaid planning and getting you qualified for benefits, the delay in getting eligible for that, because we have to go through the guardianship first. Let's say it takes 3 months to get your guardianship in place. That's 3 months of nursing home care, private pay out of your own pocket, which is $30 grand.
Yeah.
So $30,000 plus the guardianship fees or $175 POA.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
And more peace of mind, because you know what? Whenever people don't like to do these kind of documents, but whenever they do it, I'm sure you see it every day. They just have that sigh of relief.
Oh my gosh,
now.
that's absolutely.
I finally did it. Oh my God.
That's the best.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
I agree. And they go, well, Sean, you're kind of funny too.
Yeah,
So,
like
good-
me. That's
good
why we get
coffee.
along. What you see is what you got.
No, that's the best value, I think, when we're doing planning for our clients is, yes, we're solving the technical problems out there that are coming for sure. But at the same time, the best value that the client gets out of this is they leave the office with that sense of relief. And you know what? I don't have to worry about it any longer.
Yeah.
It's not on my to-do list anymore.
Yeah.
So
And you're your kids and I might be so excited about it because I remember when I made arrangements for our final remains, my husband and I, and so I took my husband and my daughter to the cemetery and said, "This is where our little garden we're going to go in," and they were like, "Great! Oh, we're so happy you did that. Don't talk to us anymore." But when the day comes, and you pick up that phone and you make one phone call.
Yep.
And everything's taken care of, and you don't have to think about nothing else.
So when we're doing some estate planning with our clients, which is one of the three main things we do in the office, is incapacity planning. We do estate planning, which is where your stuff goes when you die, type thing, how it gets there. And then there's third piece, which is making sure we can afford the cost of care without breaking the bank. But when we're talking about estate planning, I literally say to my clients, "Listen, I want your kids to be upset that this isn't harder."
Yeah.
So when they come into the office after mom or dad has died and they say, "Okay, Sean, well, what do we do?" And I say, "Well, it's done. Nothing. That's it."
Yeah.
That's what I want them to say. And that's the experience I want them to have. I don't want them to have to jump all through all these hoops and be very difficult.
Yeah.
So we try to avoid that and make it as easy as possible on you and mostly your family.
Yeah, because there's enough other stuff going on at the time. You don't need to have to deal with that.
Agreed, 100%.
And this is something that's just so very, very important.
And it's going to happen.
And right now,
it's unavoidable.
Yes,
Exactly.
none of us are getting out alive.
None of us are getting out alive.
Now it's time to hear from our wonderful partners. So don't go away. We'll be right back on Connecting Caregivers Radio.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
Choosing the right chiropractor is an important choice to make. Located in Seminole, the Alexander Spine Center team is trained on the latest chiropractic treatments and technologies. At Alexander Spine Center, you'll find chiropractic and physical therapy care that is safe, effective, and a natural approach to pain and other health-related issues. Chiropractic unlocks your body's potential and natural healing process to ensure your life is a healthy life. We treat clients from the womb to the tomb. Call 727-397-3000 for a free consultation today, or visit our website at www.alexanderspinecenter.com.
They take good care of me twice a week. And did you know they got the Reader's Choice Award for 2019 for the best chiropractic in Pinellas County? So check them out.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live. It's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides.
Guaranteed to make you laugh through your tears, Linda Burhan's book, Good Night and God Bless, is filled with humor and heartfelt inspiration to aid anyone facing the challenge of caring for a loved one at the end of life. Her story offers hope for human strength and understanding of weaknesses during a difficult time. Life doesn't normally prepare us to become a loved one's caregiver. When it happens, it's usually sudden. A diagnosis of an illness, age-related frailty, dementia, and life suddenly is anything but normal. And because we don't even know what we don't know, where do we turn to for help or guidance? In Connecting Caregivers, answers to the questions you didn't know you needed to ask, Linda offers information, education, and inspiration from her own experience and from experts whose advice, practical tools, and personal stories will empower and guide you. Make sure to add these inspiring books to your collection today. Available on Amazon.com.
Introducing the life-changing Foot Bar Walker.
I'm Peggy from Danville, Kentucky, and I'm 91 years old. The Foot Bar Walker revolutionized my care of George. It absolutely benefits the patient and the caregiver both, and that's the beauty of it. It's so easy to use. It folds up just like a dream. I got it in and out of the car without any effort at all. The saving that I made from having to put him in a nursing home came to about $192,000.
Does someone you love use a walker? Do they struggle struggle to get up from a seated position? Are you a caregiver dealing with physical pain and stress as you help your patient? The Foot Bar Walker was designed to assist not only the patient, but also the caregiver. Patients have more control standing up, and no lifting from the caregiver is required. See how it works at thefootbarwalker.com. That's thefootbarwalker.com. Peggy, would you recommend the Foot Bar Walker?
Do I ever? I would not be in the health that I'm in today at this age had it not been for the Foot Bar Walker.
This is the Tan Talk Radio Network.
And we're back. So, Sean, where can our listeners find you?
At the library this afternoon.
This afternoon in about 30 minutes
Yeah.
at Largo Library. Well, you can find us in a lot of different places. We have an online presence that we're revitalizing as we speak, so it's not really fun or exactly great, but you can download my book from there, which is a really good resource on how you would use Medicaid to help pay for the cost of care in a nursing home, and it's a great resource for that. But actually, so finding us there, that's flmedicaid.com, FL like Florida, Medicaid.com, very easy to remember. From there, we also have a physical location here in central Pinellas County, and we practice in the entire state of Florida. We do a lot of virtual law practice where we see our clients on the computer screen.
Yeah, that's fabulous.
And they've never been in our office physically.
It was gifts of COVID.
Well, gift of COVID, out of a bad thing can come something good. And so we have clients from Pensacola to Key West.
Fabulous.
So
thank you, my friend.
all right, thank you
As
for having
always.
me. And thanks, Officer Joel. I love this guy. He's
the
amazing.
bomb.
He's the bomb.
So I want to talk about Sages Theater. They have some new shows coming out. The Dealmaker, June 10th at Lutheran Church of Resurrection in Palm Harbor. Francis William Playhouse on June 17th. The Palladium, July 1st, and July 8th at Our Lady Queen of Peace Catholic Church. You can go to sagestheater.org to find more information. All the shows are free. Go there. They have some serious issues, but they make fun of them, and they have some laughs of it, and it'll really make you open your eyes a little bit to some things that are going on. One last thing I want to say today, I had a caregiver in my support group this morning. Her husband has just been put on hospice, and he's all morphined up, and he's not really talking, and the conversation was, do I need to be with him when he dies? And that's your personal conversation. I want you to know that. And I want you to know that many times it's not your decision. Maybe many times it's the person who's dying makes that decision, that when you leave to go have dinner, they don't want you there. But I want you to remember that their spirit is always there with you. Even if they cannot talk to you or anything more, their spirit is there and their heart is there. And that's what's the most important thing. Remember, I'm here for you all the time. People say, somebody called me up and said, my husband's not eating. He's going to die. I said, I'm sorry, honey. Your husband's not eating because he is dying. And just let it be that way. So I'm here for any questions, anything I can do for you. Come to lindaburhans.com or call me at 727-365-8383. Tune in next week for another great show. Remember, God loves you all the time, and have a delicious day.